Welcome into another edition of the Intangibles brought to you by Arrowhead Addict. My name is Price Carter, and I am joined by a man who may never work again, noted teacher Christian Ainsworth. Christian, when was the last day that you actually put in 8 hours of work?
Oh my God, I can't even remember. It was before break. It was before Christmas was the last time I actually
December
had.
20th?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, December 18th, maybe. So,
well, T's and P's to you. And, when are you rolling out of bed nowadays?
Soft 9:30 is about.
I was going to say, I texted you this morning and I saw the little silence notifications on iMessage, and I was like, that son of a bitch is still sleeping.
Damn right I was, dude. I'm sleeping in.
Oh, to be you. I have many people who want me awake around 6:30. Usually people yelling, "Dad, Dad." That's what my son does now on the baby monitor. Just yells like, "Dad, I'm up. Please come get me." Well, it is a wonderful weekend ahead of us here. It is a bad weekend to be an ice cold beer and a crock pot full of buffalo chicken dip, because we have college football playoff on Friday tonight. Then we have 2 NFL playoff games on Saturday, 3 NFL playoff games on Sunday. And if that wasn't enough, we've got Monday Night Football, playoff football. So there is so much to look forward to and talk about. Before we get going with that, though, Christian, I wanted to ask you real quickly about some of the head coaching openings and how they relate to the Chiefs. It looks like we've got a couple of requests for some Chiefs assistant coaches and also general manager requests. So far, Matt Nagy, the Chiefs offensive coordinator, has been requested to interview with the New York Jets. Steve Spagnuolo, the defensive coordinator, has been requested to speak with the Jacksonville Jaguars, New York Jets, Las Vegas Raiders, and then Mike Borgonzi, who's an assistant GM, has been requested to meet with the New York Jets and the Tennessee Titans. First, I'll ask you, do you think any of these guys get a job?
I think Spagnuolo could get a job. If he really wanted one, if he wanted to go out and be a head coach, I think he could go do it. I think there's some serious interest for him. Now, Matt Nagy is a little bit less so. We talked about it the other day, just, casual phone call. And you brought up the Saints, which I thought was an incredibly, kind of a low key kind of pick for Matt Nagy, like a team that's probably not in the best kind of shape, especially financial wise. Like they are, a team that is in definitely a different situation than a lot of teams. But then you also have all the former Chiefs, and it's like, man, if they're trying to recreate what the Chiefs are doing, that seems like the perfect pick. But there's nobody I could see Matt Nagy going to. I don't think Spagnuolo is going to the Raiders. I don't think he's going to the Jets. Those are 2 franchises that kind of in between. The Bears is the only one that I could see as young up and coming team. Seem like they have some pieces, just need leadership that he might go to. But no, none of these are really striking me as oh my God, we got to worry about getting a DC in the offseason.
Yeah, I think when it comes to Spags, I think some of us kind of underestimate the fact that he still wants to be a coach. And I'm saying here, actually, Matt Nagy did interview for the Saints job. So that's one I missed there on pulling this up. But I think for Nagy, the Saints would probably be the only fit. You've got a guy who, let's be clear, didn't have a good tenure in Chicago. So especially with the media, that was something he struggled with. So the idea of him going and taking the New York Jets job, it's just not something I see working out well. Then you also have to throw in the fact that he is going to have a hard time, just like Eric Bieniemy did, of separating himself from what Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes do. So the Saints are a job I could potentially see for him. There's a veteran quarterback there. And this is a team that honestly just needs to take its medicine against the cap for a couple of years and soft or hard rebuild. It's kind of honestly, it's a lame duck coaching position, but it's something that if you get success there, they're a pretty loyal team. They say with that Sean Payton tree, pass Sean Payton. So I could see it. Also, side note, just going back to the whole dialogue about Matt Nagy, Eric Bieniemy, who matters, offensive coordinator. If Matt Nagy walks out the door, are any of us going to be concerned about the state of the offense?
We shouldn't be. I know some people might be, but honestly, some people might be relieved. Everything's going to change once he leaves, which is kind of a weird situation to be in.
Same thing with Eric Bieniemy, in my opinion. Yeah. Eric Bieniemy left and I wasn't sweating bullets about the offense. On the other side of the coin, Steve Spagnuolo leaves. I do think that there would be some legitimate reason to be concerned, especially because I think sometimes, again, we measure things by what is the best possible outcome here instead of how can this fail? What is the worst possible outcome? I feel like Steve Spagnuolo has such a high floor as a coach because of what he can do in defensively, and he's done it before. And here in Kansas City, he runs the entire defense. Like, Andy Reid does not meddle in that. The Jacksonville Jaguars, New York Jets, Las Vegas Raiders, I would be surprised if he went to the Raiders. We just typically don't see guys go in division. It's probably happened before, but it's not very common. The Jaguars is the one that interests me a little bit. The only thing there is, like, would they take a guy from the Andy Reid tree after just walking away from Doug Peterson? I'm not sure. And the Jets are just like an ultimate wild card, because are they breaking up with the Rodgers thing and Devontae and that whole way of life? Are they running it back again? How is that going to work? That's interesting. And then let's add in Mike Borgonzi here. I think Mike Borgonzi, there's a good shot that he is gone. He's gotten a really good reputation around the league. People who actually know and are in these circles with general managers, they speak really highly of him and him as a talent evaluator. I think right now Ryan Poles is the only other guy that's really kind of left the organization. That's kind of a mixed bag, but you have to look at what he did with that trade in Carolina and still say, like, that was a hell of a trade. Whether the Caleb Williams thing works out or not, that's still a hell of a talent acquisition. He's going to be in charge of hiring a new head coach here, but it'll be interesting to see if any of these guys are gone. I do think that there's a shot that at least one of them is gone.
Yeah, definitely. I would say probably Matt Nagy is the one that I would presume is going to be gone.
Really? You think Nagy?
Yes. Yeah. I just think that Spagnuolo is like in such a good spot with where he's at, where it's like, hey, I'm probably going to be talked about in the conversation as one of the best defensive coordinators of all time. One of the best big game defensive coordinators of all time, for sure. And he's in a situation where he's part of a dynasty, and he's like the key. I'm sure. I mean, you've talked about it just a second ago. He's kind of the guy on defense, and he doesn't meddle with that side of the ball. It's like, hey, I have a whole side of the football that I get to control the way I want to. Andy Reid does all that extra, talk to the media, like basically be the person who it all falls on. It's like, and I'm the DC, and I get, all the adulation whenever things go right. So he's kind of in this perfect spot. Matt Nagy is in a situation where I think he doesn't get as much credit as he thinks he deserves. And some of that is probably correct. He's probably doing a lot of things with the quarterbacks that, are behind the scenes, not everybody gets to see. So he might want to kind of prove himself there and be like, hey, listen, that Bears thing, even the past head coach couldn't get it done there too. Like, it wasn't just on me. Put me someplace where I can have at least a shot at being in a good situation, and then I'll get it done. And so, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I just don't see it's likely that Spagnuolo leaves because of, listen to the quarterbacks of the openings. Drake May, whatever the hell the Jets are doing. The Titans, Cam Ward or Shadir Sanders. The Raiders, who would also like it to be Cam Ward or Shadir Sanders. You've got the Saints with Derek Carr, Caleb Williams. I mean, like, if you just listen to those openings, they're all very young quarterback centric. And I think that, looking at how Bryce Young's season turned around with Dave Canales, I think a lot of people are going to be looking to pair an offensive-minded coach with those young quarterbacks. The Raiders, the Titans, they could be drafting quarterbacks. Nagy, that's why I said, like, the Saints might make sense. Like, you feel like him and Derek Carr could maybe get on the same page to craft a somewhat effective offense. So in my opinion, I think it's Borgonzi is most likely gone, which, I mean, those things are really hard to quantify. Like, the Chiefs lost their cap wizard last year. I'm struggling to remember his name, but he was the guy who he got a ton amount of credit for what he did with the salary cap and all the wizardry the Chiefs have done with it. You can't just keep losing guys and just keep chugging along. Eventually it will make an impact, but it's a little bit harder to quantify rather than a defensive coordinator.
Yeah, well, and it's important to understand, like, the Chiefs have not had to deal with that brain drain for a while now. Like, throughout this dynasty,
why would you hire people from the current dynasty in the NFL? Everyone couldn't wait to hire Patriots people, but let's, what do the Chiefs know?
Yeah, but I mean, like, that's not common at all. Like, there are plenty of teams that have a really good run. Like Bill Belichick, the Patriots were a really, really good example of that, where it's like, hey, we're poaching a DC, we're poaching an offensive coordinator once every 2 or 3 years. And that's just the way it's going to be. And hopefully Bill Belichick can deal with that. And, you've got a GM that does really, really well. We're poaching all the guys underneath him. And it's like, okay, well, at some point you start to fall off and those cracks in the foundation start to present themselves. It's like, that has not been an issue for the Kansas City Chiefs, which has been an absolute blessing.
For sure. I think, just going forward, it'll just be interesting to see how this weaves in. keep in mind that teams are going to request to speak to these guys now because the Chiefs are on a bye. You cannot request to speak to these coaches during the playoffs. That's kind of been a rule that's implemented. And honestly, we've seen this impact hiring. Mike McDonald was the last head coach hired last year, and that's because he was in the AFC Championship game. So they had to wait until after that to get him in the building and start hiring him and those type of things. So it's also possible that helps the Chiefs a little bit. It's just that these guys, they want to get this rolling. Keep in mind, if you start your staff now, if you're a GM or a head coach, you're dramatically behind the 8 ball when it comes to the draft. So they want to get going as quickly as possible. So we will keep our eye on that. Something else we want to keep our eye on is Underdog Fantasy. This is one of the best football weekends of the year. Texas, Ohio State plays tonight in the Cotton Bowl. You've got 2 NFL playoff games Saturday, 3 on Sunday, and another one on Monday Night Football. What about Ladd McConkey? Higher or lower than 73.5 yards out of the slot against that Texans defense? I like that. Saquon. This is free money. Saquon more than half a touchdown. Definitely taking the higher on that. Josh Allen higher than 1.5 touchdowns against that vaunted Broncos defense. You be the judge on Underdog. Underdog is the place to play if you're a sports fan looking to win money while watching sports. With over 5 million happy players and $2 billion won, Underdog makes it fun and easy to cash in on all your favorite athletes' performances. Compete against other players just by selecting higher or lower on 2 or more players' stats. And you could win up to 1,000 times your money. So turn every touchdown into a win with Underdog. Download the app today and use our code Arrowhead Addict. That's all one word to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Again, that's code Arrowhead Addict, all one word to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Every player, every score, just select higher or lower on Underdog. Must be 18 years or older and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Visit www.npcgambling.org. Arizona 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT-STEP to 53342. New York, call the 24/7 Hope line 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY to 467-369. Well, now let's spend the next, what do we got, 45 minutes here? Let's spend the next 45 minutes just talking about the Chiefs getting their brains blasted in 34-0. Does that sound appealing?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, dude. I thought we were going to spend it talking about the Bengals fans being all pissed off about the situation.
No one's talking about that. We should definitely talk about that. There's no dialogue about Bengals fans going on right now. So, hey, look, you got to give it to the Bengals fans. Their team's not playing right now, so they're still clinging to any relevancy that they have. So let them dance in the rain while they have it, I guess.
To be fair, I would be pissed off too if a team eliminated me in the playoffs or making it to the playoffs by beating me, by losing, and by beating a team that needed to beat us. So
I simply would be pissed at Jacoby Brissett eliminating my football team, but that's just me. You've got, supposedly Patrick Mahomes' big rival, the only quarterback that's better than Patrick Mahomes, despite not having any all-pro nods, MVPs, or Super Bowl championships. But by all means, get mad at the Chiefs for doing what they earned the right to do, rather than your own team for losing to Jacoby Brissett in week 1, getting outplayed by rookie Jaden Daniels in week 4. Whatever you got to do to feel better about yourselves. I continue to say there are lots of really great fans and lots of really great fan bases in the NFL. I don't mind Bills fans. A lot of people do. I don't mind Bills fans. I don't mind Ravens fans. Keep in mind, there's scum of the earth everywhere. There's really bad Chiefs fans. They made a documentary about it. Check it out. But Bengals fans, man, I can't. It's the least self-awareness I've ever seen. And just you wait. As soon as the weather starts to turn, it'll be Bengals season. The amount of tweets I have that say Jermaine Burton will be better than Xavier Worthy in his rookie year. Jermaine Burton ain't barely on the team anymore. He has 3 catches. He's at the casino the night before a game gambling. I've got news for you. You're just making stuff up. It's just delusion. I can't. Let's talk about real football played by a real team that really made the playoffs on their own accord. The Kansas City Chiefs. They did play a game in Denver. It was debatable if it actually happened. We will not acknowledge it. But we do have to talk about a couple of big questions that the Chiefs need to answer before they go into the postseason. And I feel like this is probably the biggest dialogue centering around this game. I took a look at every snap of pass pro and run blocking from DJ Humphries, keeping in mind I've also evaluated the last couple of weeks of Joe Thuney. So, Christian, let me ask you this. Who lines up at left tackle for the Chiefs in the divisional round?
I was really hoping that I'd be able to say DJ Humphries. I really, truly was, because I think the ceiling of the offensive line is so much higher potentially whenever he's in there, but it can't be. I'm sorry. Joe Thuney's got to be the left tackle going forward. And there were some reps, some quick losses that I saw. And keep in mind, it's Denver. They have a pretty good defensive line. Like Nick Bonito is a fantastic player. We got other players on the defensive line as well. So it wasn't like this, cake matchup, but you lose in half a second to a defensive lineman 3 or 4 times in a game. And you just can't make those mistakes. It's just, you can't do it with Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. That's how you ruin a drive. That's how this Chiefs offense is not as good as it once was. I think the ceiling is much higher than earlier in the season, but it's like, man, a sack might be the difference in the game. And DJ Humphries, I don't see how you can roll him out. PFF have had him graded as the lowest offensive lineman to play last week. So, and I'm not a huge PFF guy, but that at least tells you something.
First off, the PFF grade, I have no idea what they watched. To say that was the worst tackle performance the Chiefs have gotten all season, factoring in the Kingsley Suamataia game against Trey Hendrickson, some of the performance Wanya Moore's had, I don't know what they were watching, man. I got to be honest. Like, I try to stand by PFF and some of the stuff they do. That one I cannot get with. If you want to tell me it wasn't great, I'll listen to it. But to say that he was like the worst offensive lineman to play last week is delusion. Here's the thing. It is really, really hard to come to an actual conclusion based off that game. You've got Carson Wentz, holds onto the ball a lot longer. That's a part of his reputation. You've got the second string and third string wide receivers out there who can't separate quickly. You've got lesser offensive linemen beside him, so they're struggling to pick up things. You've got a guy making his first start in like years at guard next to him in Kingsley Suamataia. He's coming off an injury. I just think that it's really hard to come away with some sort of deep conclusion from this. Like, if you're steadfast in how you feel about it, I'm just not sure how you've arrived at that conclusion, given the information that we have right now. So far, we have. Go ahead.
Oh, I would just say that I'm looking at results right now, and I think that Joe Thuney right now is a better player at left tackle than DJ Humphries is. That's it. I think that if you compare like Caliendo's play in the interior offensive line to DJ Humphries' play on left tackle, then I think that Caliendo is a better guard or has been playing better guard play than Humphries, and I think it kind of makes the offensive line better.
My thing is this. With Joe Thuney, they were running, and I don't want to be derogatory because it's worked, but they're running a Mickey Mouse offense. They are running a lot of really fast separating routes, 1 and 2 step drops. The RPO game has came back, which is fine. I actually don't mind that. But I just think it's really tough to sit there and say, this is the offense that you can run for 3 playoff games in gotta have it situations. And let's be clear, Joe Thuney has not put together some sort of clinic at left tackle. He's not, the second coming of Trent Williams or something. He has struggled. Now, he has played a nice lineup of pass rushers. Myles Garrett, Danielle Hunter, played Alex Highsmith. Like, there's some really talented players that he's faced. But he's not some brick wall over there. So I don't think the gap's as big as some people want to make it out to be. And going back to the offense, they used a lot more pure drop back with less help. And I think the rep that DJ Humphries gave up the sack on, the one that most people will point to as the ugly loss, which it was, I almost wonder if Samaje Perine was supposed to help out a little bit there. Regardless, to me, I think right now I'm a slight lean towards starting DJ Humphries. Part of that, okay. Part of the reason for that is I think we're talking about 3 players right now. We're talking about DJ Humphries, we're talking about Joe Thuney, and we're talking about not Nick Allegretti. Well, I can't remember his name. Mike Caliendo. Sorry, wrong Italian. My bad.
No, you're good.
Mike Caliendo, I think, is the less experienced and the less talented of those 3 players, even in current state. I think there's still some reasons to tell yourself DJ Humphries has still not played a full game because of injury and because of basically game flow, right? He was pulled in that game more or less because there was no point in it. with 2 weeks to practice, I would like to see DJ Humphries start out at left tackle because I think you get the all-pro back at his all-pro position. You help the run game. Then you give DJ Humphries every chance to round into form like he can. You can still do some of the quicker firing offense things that they did with Tooney at left tackle. And if it's an absolute mitigated disaster, you can go back to Tooney and Caliendo. But I think that run difference makes a difference. And also, like, let's keep in mind some of the guys that they have a chance of seeing in the playoffs, Zach Allen, Justin Madubuike, Ed Oliver. There's a lot of really good interior pass rushers that the Chiefs could potentially be seeing in the playoffs. And I would like Joe Tooney to be there. And that's obviously where the most experience in this offensive line is. So right now, I will take the ceiling of DJ Humphries because let's be clear. The best form of this offensive line is DJ Humphries before he gets hurt last year. Like if he's that version of himself or close to it, and the other four guys. And they can help DJ Humphries. They can do some of the things that they were helping to do Joe Tooney. The big part about that, Jawan Taylor's got to be Jawan Taylor, the good version of himself, right? And he did that last year in the playoffs. And I think he's capable of doing that. So for me right now, I am a slight lean towards DJ Humphries, but it's more because you can undo that decision, right? I think if it falls through, like if it's the second half and Patrick Mahomes just getting killed in the divisional, I think you make the Tooney move because to your credit, like you said, Joe Tooney doesn't lose ugly. He plays tackle like a guard. He brings the fight to the edge defender. He doesn't get beat up the arc, but he also compensates a lot for that. And because of that, I think he bends a little bit at the waist, which is pretty normal if you're a guard playing tackle. And then the length concerns, they show up a lot, especially when you've got big, long, bendy edge guys, which, by the way, the most likely matchups that the Chiefs are going to face in the divisional round, the Steelers, the Texans, and the Chargers, all three have experienced quality edge rushers. So I would like to see Humphries get the nod. I would like to see them try to integrate practice. The one thing, though, is I don't want them to set him up to fail. I don't want to see the big 7-5-step play action deep. Like they need to kind of still keep that offense because I think Patrick Mahomes is at his best version when he gets the ball out of his hands too. That's the Tom Brady thing. Like you couldn't sack Tom Brady because he got the ball out so quickly.
Yeah, well, and let's just be clear here. What we're discussing here, DJ Humphries versus Joe Tooney, this is not an A+ in Joe Tooney and a D- in DJ Humphries. This is much closer to like a B and a B-. Like this is splitting hairs. This is not like one is clearly better than the other. And DJ Humphries could turn into a B+, A- player. So again, Joe Tooney has not been lighting the world up. DJ Humphries has not been so god awful. He's the worst left tackle in the league. Just making sure everybody's clear here. This is not a completely one-sided thing here. Go ahead.
I was just going to add in that I think just keep in mind the way it rolls out there might not be the way that it finishes, right, too. So I would be surprised if they ran Joe Tooney out there and then went to DJ Humphries. But it's possible. There's just like, it's a weird stat, but I would love to see the stat of like most QB wins with starting left tackle variations because the Chiefs are, working on their 4th and 5th maybe even. So we will see how it plays out. Another spot that we need to kind of answer some questions about is the slot cornerback position. Now, almost immediately after we stopped recording last week, the announcement came out that the Chiefs were opening up the practice window for Jalen Watson. Team beat reporter Nate Taylor of The Athletic reported yesterday that they did not open up his practice window to not play him. That there is a very real chance that he plays the divisional round and plays on a pitch count, which is fantastic news. He was playing like one of the better corners in the league before he got hurt and was probably a top 3 or 4 defender on the team before he got hurt. Now, I would also like to bring up that was before he got hurt. Look to Isaiah Pacheco, who had a very similar injury and kind of how his burst and bend is now. There's definitely some obvious repercussions of his injury. But this corner question just got a lot more interesting if you're factoring in Jalen Watson. You've got Trent McDuffie, Jalen Watson, Joshua Williams, Najee Johnson. And then the big question for me is what happens at the slot? Chris Roland Wallace took the lion's share of the slot snaps while Shamari Connor was down. His season-high snap total came at 42 slot snaps against the Steelers. Now, the Steelers, might I add, don't really have a dynamic slot receiver, as George Pickens tends to run outside. But Shamari Connor was a frequent struggling point for the defense. It seemed very, very easy to target him early and often, especially for teams like the Bills, who have a very good slot receiver, or the Ravens if Zay Flowers is back in the playoffs. So I ask you, with the Jalen Watson news, with the return of Shamari Connor, who did leave the game injured, we don't really have an update on that. It does not seem severe, just given the reporting. Who do you think should be playing the lion's share of the slot snaps in the divisional round?
Well, I would say that it doesn't really depend, but I'll just say Christian Roland Wallace, and there's a few reasons for that. And I think you could probably mix in some Shamari Connor and kind of get a taste of how these guys are playing in the playoffs, because it is a different game when you get into the playoffs and you get into these situations where teams are deliberately targeting cornerbacks in the slot. They're trying to get those easy first downs. I think Christian Roland Wallace is a better player. I think that he's maybe got a higher ceiling, and I think we haven't seen the worst of him yet. I think that he's not that, he's going to play bad football in the near future, but we've seen some real lows with Shamari Connor. Now, the best part about Jalen Watson coming back is that you're going to be put in these situations where hopefully you can have Watson on the outside, Williams on the outside, and Trent McDuffie in the slot on some of the best wide receivers in the league. And I think that puts the team, that's like their best defensive set. If they're in a nickel package, they have the three defensive backs right there that can cover all three of those positions and do fairly well. So I don't think any of these players, it depends on how much, Watson comes out and actually plays, how many snaps he actually gets, but you're not going to see these players for a majority of the game, I would imagine. I think that best case scenario, or, for those players, is they're going to see about 50% of the snaps, maybe 60. And I think that you can live with Christian Roland Wallace playing 60% of the slot snaps. I don't know if you can with Shamari Connor.
I think the tricky thing here is I think there's actually an alternative answer. Let me read to you a number here. Week 1, 21. Week 2, 22. Week 3, 18. Week 4, 11. Week 5, 19. Week 6, 0. Week 7, 9. Week 8, 1. As you can notice, the further we go, the smaller the number goes. Those are Trent McDuffie slot snaps. What happened in week 6? An injury to Jalen Watson against the 49ers. So I think that Trent McDuffie, I don't think that he exclusively played in the slot. Obviously, he didn't when Jalen Watson was healthy. But I think if we can get Trent McDuffie, who was kind of towards the beginning of the season doing a lot more shadowing with number one receivers, if we can get him back to being kind of that apex defender eraser level, which we've seen the Chiefs like to do back when L'Jarius Sneed was here too, which is part of what made that tandem so nasty, is that you just had Sneed who just put clamps on your number one, and then you had McDuffie who could go and shut down a guy like Deebo Samuel. I think that this could get the most out of Trent McDuffie, who is clearly, a top 2 defender on the team. And then, just a dabble of Chris Roland Wallace, a dabble of Shamari Connor. I think our friend of the show, Seth Kaiser, said this. He said that he would prefer Jalen Watson to come back over a healthy Rashee Rice if he could push one lever, because Watson I thought that was pretty bold, but it kind of makes sense in the sense that, like, the Chiefs defense before the debacle in Denver, again, that didn't matter, was second in points allowed and 4th in yards allowed. This is another top 5 elite defense. We all spent all season talking about, like, hey, we know the defense won't be that good. And by the way, they faced as many playoff teams as anyone else in the field did, because they faced the Chargers twice. They faced the Broncos once, technically twice. We're not counting that. But I think if you feel better about Joshua Williams now than we probably did around that time that not Christian Roland Wallace, that Shamari Connor went down, or Jalen Watson. Too many people. I feel better about that. So if you can run Joshua Williams, Jalen Watson, Trent McDuffie out there, and then you can mix in Shamari Connor, Roland Wallace, I think the best thing that gives you is a really multiple defense. And, oh, by the way, the one guy who doesn't want to burn the tape from the Denver game, Jaden Hicks. You still got Justin Reed, who's resting right now. To me, this just makes the defense much more multiple and variable, where they can do all the little tricks that they did, where you've got Drew Tranquill dropping back and playing deep half quarters safety against the Ravens. I mean, this is the type of stuff that gives a defensive mastermind like Spags the advantage to do what he wants to do. So this is huge news. I'm very excited for him to be back. And I guess the one thing is you just hope that the recovery continues to go well and that he is able to return to form. And also, let's keep in mind, too, that he's probably not going to come back and be the same version of himself. Now, if he can come back and be 95% of himself, that's a huge advantage. And I think the Chiefs are just really fortunate that these injuries have timed out well. And it's going to be kind of funny whenever people are like, wait, the Chiefs are in the AFC Championship game again. Are they good? They're not the worst 9-1 team ever. They're not frauds. It's like, no, they were just hurt, which I think so many people just really underestimated how many really good players they had that were hurt throughout that time.
Yeah, well, and not just hurt, but hurt and coming back. That's the other thing, too, is like you have that fall off from the players who are missing, and then you have them coming back. And as soon as they come back, maybe they're 80% of what they were, and they work up to 95% of what they were. It's not like the Lions, where you have players that are going to be gone for the rest of the season that are key cogs in your team. It's like, yeah, Rashee Rice was a fantastic player. He's probably the third most important player on the offense. Like that's just, how it was. But yeah, it's such a tough decision, especially because you have Jalen Watson coming back. But I agree, man. I think you probably got to rotate these guys in. And if Jalen Watson can play 60% of the snaps, that completely changes how the defense looks.
Yeah, Shamari Connor is the one that interests me the most because I'd have to go back and look. I don't really remember a ton of snaps of him playing traditional safety because last year there was a lot of Mike Edwards back there. Brian Cook until he got hurt. You still had Justin Reed. And I seem to remember Connor getting more and more on the field because of the slot and because of doing some of those things. Mike Edwards got hurt in the Buffalo game. That was probably Shamari Connor's best game of the playoffs. I do think that they like him playing downhill. So maybe he's an early down guy, and then you start bringing, kicking McDuffie in on passing downs. That could be an option. And I hope that whatever progress Joshua Williams has made, I hope he continues that progress because I think he kind of got in the doghouse for some reason or another. I'm not sure, but he's clearly one of the more naturally talented guys they have. Whereas guys like Najee Johnson, Roland Wallace, Shamari Connor, I think it's more like of some of the other elements of they understand the scheme, solid tacklers, but Williams has the more coverage traits that translate to being able to recover when you do mess something up.
Yeah, I agree.
Last question. This one's a little bit harder to answer because we aren't doctors, but what is Harrison Butker's health? I've already talked about this a little bit on the post-game and halftime shows that I was just a little bit confused by the way they handled Harrison Butker because of the injury and how quickly they brought him back after he was eligible to come back. Do you feel comfortable with Harrison Butker lining up for a game-winning kick in the playoffs right now?
I'm a little more scared than normal, but at this point, what's he missed one probably layup kick that he probably should have hit. You just got to ride with the guy who's been the most clutch kicker in the league the past 3 or 4 years. Of course, I'm a little bit more worried. And some of his form when he's going down and he drops that left knee after kicking, you look at it and you go, man, something's really wrong. But yeah, it's just awkward to look at. But it's like, man, what can you do? What can you do except, rely on that guy? Now, if he can't be that dude, then I think the Chiefs are going to feel that maybe more than other teams just because we rely on him so heavily to be that guy. But yeah, man, if it's a serious issue and he can't, return to form, then yeah, it's a huge problem.
Yeah. The only thing that I will mention is, and this may not be a great argument to support it because in 2022, the Chiefs were the best offense in the NFL, but Harrison Butker had a really rough year in 2022. He had that really early injury against the Cardinals in week 1 and just never really rounded back into shape. He even missed a kick in the Super Bowl. The Chiefs won 38-35. They left 3 points on the field there from a missed kick from Butker. The Chiefs have done this in the playoffs before where he's just not the healthiest version of himself, but he still made a clutch kick against the Bengals to win that game, right? Kicks that aren't easy. It seems like the Chiefs game winners that are rarely 22, 32 yarders, they're always 49 yards for the win, and the flags are flapping, and you can see the player's breath, and the ball is as hard as a rock because it's in the Arrowhead. So yeah, that one's a little scary. you just got to go with the reputation with him as just like he has done it time and time again. But boy, it would be heartbreaking for him to come through so many times. You just got to remember too, like, there's a lot of people who don't like Harrison Butker for some other reasons. So there'll be some people, if the Chiefs season were to end due to a bad kick or something like that, there'll be a lot of people who are already really upset at him, but he's delivered a ton of times. And there's, if it's a game deciding kick, there was another 59 minutes and 30 seconds of that game that were played. Cough, cough, Bills fans talking about Tyler Bass. You could have won the game in those other times too, right? No game comes down to a single play. So let's hope that Harrison Butker knee is healthy and rested up. Speaking of resting up and buffalo chicken dip and ice cold beer, let's talk about the wild card round here for a second. We're not going to go through and break down every single game and analyze every game, but I will bring you this from ESPN stats and info. Underdogs are 69 and 105 all time on wildcard weekend, an average of 1.5 upsets per a season. At least one underdog has won a game in the wildcard round in 40 of the 46 seasons dating back to 1978. So let me read through this slate here real quick and tell me which game you're picking as the underdog winning. Keep in mind, the Chargers are favorites on the road against the Texans. The Steelers are underdogs to the Ravens. The Broncos are underdogs to the Bills. The Packers are underdogs to the Eagles. Commanders are a slight underdog, I think it's like 3.5 last time I check it, to the Bucks. And then the Vikings are favored against the Rams. Which underdog do you think has the best shot at winning? Shout out Underdog Fantasy.
Honestly, I'm probably going to go with the Rams here. I love the Vikings. One of my best friends is a Vikings fan, so I hear all of the gripe, all of the best plays from Vikings every single year. The Rams just seem like a buzzsaw team that's getting hot at the right time. Cooper Kupp has been playing fantastic. Same thing with Puka Nacua. That offense is humming. The defense has gotten better. Underrated weapons on the offense as well. Kyren Williams, I know he's if you're a fantasy football player, you've absolutely heard of him. But if you're not, you probably haven't. And he's a fantastic running back. I just can't go. I think the Commanders are a little fraudulent. I think the Packers probably aren't going to beat the Eagles, who are playing their best football as well. Broncos, Bills, Broncos are just happy to be here. Steelers too. I mean, they haven't played the best schedule. Is there a team you like better than the Rams to upset?
Well, to your credit, you've picked the smallest spread. The Vikings are catching just 1.5 in this game, or giving 1.5, excuse me, though they're on the road in LA, which tells you they're probably about a 4.5 point favorite at home, if that's where it was, given that 3 points is usually the spread for a home team. That one's easy to pick because the Rams are just a wildly inconsistent team. When they line up against some teams, by the way, they beat the Vikings in the regular season. That was back in October. When their offense is rolling, it's one of the most aesthetically pleasing juggernauts in the NFL. In that game against the Bills, I mean, man, the Bills defense has some concerns. I don't know who was stopping the Rams that day. When you get Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua going, Kyren Williams, you got Sean McVay, and then Matt Stafford, man, he is just like the salt and pepper and the beard. Unc still got it. He's slinging the ball, doing all the things that he does. It just depends on what version of Rams show up. So yeah, I could see that one being the underdog. The one that I'm going to take, I think recently, I feel like Wildcard Weekend has mostly been kind of like expectations met, right? We get all hyped for these games and there's a lot of oh, yep, well, this is just the better team. Last year, that upset was the Packers, who just dog walked the Cowboys in their home stadium. This year, I'm going to take the Commanders. I just think that Buccaneers defense, the secondary, is pretty weak. I just actually finished charting that secondary because I was charting the Saints for FTN. And let me tell you, there's a lot of space out there for those guys. And those linebackers, KJ Britt and, older version of their other linebacker, whose name escaped me for a second here, they are going to struggle against that run game with Jane Daniels. And I'm just going off of what I've seen from Jane Daniels so far. I've just been so impressed by his composure in the big moments. And I really don't think that this moment is going to be too big for him. Levante David, the linebacker, by the way, Nebraska Cornhusker. I'm a terrible person for forgetting his name. Shout out to the GOAT. But Yeah, I don't know. I see the Commanders being able to pull this off. I think that their pass rush is good enough. They've gotten healthier along the defensive line that I think that they're going to force Baker to make some throws that maybe he doesn't want to throw. And I think really this is going to be a race to 40, honestly, this game. And I like this game too because like this is probably the one that I think is the most toss up anyway. So give me the Commanders to upset the Buccaneers. I'm tempted, just the slightest bit tempted. Ravens without Zay Flowers. The Steelers have been really good at shutting down Lamar historically, controlling quarterback runs, but the vibes are just so bad right now around the Steelers and around Pickens that I guess I'm gonna have to take the Commanders.
Yeah, and keep in mind the Commanders just beat the Eagles like just a few weeks ago. They're not an awful football team. Jaden Daniels has been fantastic. Bucks also, important to note here, completely riddled with injuries in the secondary. Like even early in the season, lost almost all of their secondary to IR. And then even familiar faces like Mike Edwards lost for a significant portion of time. He's questionable for the upcoming game. So
yeah, and to your point about that Eagles game against the Commanders recently, that did feature Kenny Pickett for a majority of the game, but also the Commanders put up 36 points on what's widely considered one of the better defenses in the NFL. So that's the thing. Like Jane Daniels, I know that it's weird because we're sitting here with Patrick Mahomes, but I think he has that it factor. And I think having some big comebacks early have just taken some of that pressure off of him. And if they're down 9, I still have a belief in him that he can go and do it. And the Commanders or the Buccaneers, they can score too. Yeah, so real quick, when it comes to the playoff field, your 3 most likely teams that the Chiefs could be seeing coming into Arrowhead are the Chargers, the Steelers, and the Texans, right? When I say likely, it means like I don't think that the Broncos will go and upset the Bills. If that happens, if the Broncos win, they're coming to Arrowhead. No other option. They're the lowest seed. They'd be coming to Arrowhead. In which case, you're probably thrilled about that. Knock off a great quarterback like Josh Allen. You got a chance to advance to the AFC Championship game with a divisional rival with Bo Nix, right? I think like that game could be tough. We've seen them play the Chiefs close whenever they were playing their starters, but I will take that bet over Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. So who do you want to see? Chargers, Texans, Steelers?
Probably Texans. And there are a few reasons that I say that. One, they've also been riddled with injuries. I know we're late in the season. Everybody has injuries, but that offensive line looked awful when we played against them. We've also beaten them previously, 27-19. I forgot what week that was, but we played them pretty late into the season as well. This wasn't like a week 1 or week 2 matchup that, completely different teams. Like this is pretty close to the same iteration of the Texans that we've played already. Also, I just feel like of those 3 teams, they are the team with the worst coach. And when you get into playoff football, teams like the Chargers are not going to make the dumb mistakes like the Chargers have made in years past, where it's like, hey, we're going for 4th and 7 on our own 30-yard line. They're not going to make that decision. The Texans might. The Steelers are also in that situation where Mike Tomlin has played postseason football. He knows how the game's supposed to be played. He knows what it looks like. Texans are in that situation where it's CJ Stroud, who has been really, really inconsistent all year, and a wide receiver core that, if you've looked at it recently, could you name more than 2 people on it? Like it's would be a very good matchup for our defensive backs who would probably have Jalen Watson coming back from injury and then Christian Roland Wallace in the slot, and just seems like a better matchup than the Chargers or the Steelers.
Yeah, Chargers are probably the least favorite team of those 3 for me, just because the defense is good. Justin Herbert, I think, is the best quarterback of those 3. And then you're also dealing with a divisional rival, great coach, all those things. And the Chargers, last time the Chiefs faced the Chargers, it did kind of come down to the wire, and they did that without Ladd McConkey. So that's the least favorite. Also, I think it's the most likely to happen. Unfortunately, I think that there's a pretty good chance that they go in there and beat the Texans. And then all that takes is the Bills and the Ravens to win as heavy favorites against the Bills or against the Broncos and the Steelers. And that's the outcome you get. If I could pull a lever, if I could push a button right now, it'd be the Steelers. Get Lamar Jackson and another really good Ravens team out of there. Then you get them coming to Arrowhead with all the drama and everything that's been there. That's the one I'd push. That, like, I'm elated for that opportunity. I think the Chiefs dog walk them. That game could have been bigger than it was on Christmas Day, on short rest, all those type of things. There is a little nervousness of playing a team that close twice, like recently, but I think the Chiefs are different in the playoffs, given what they have done in the past and just what the stakes are for them right now. So that would definitely be the one I pull. The Texans are lukewarm. I'd still be pretty pleased with the Texans, just kind of given what that current version of the team is. Pass rushers are pretty stingy. The defense is still pretty good. Their offense is still really struggling. I think that they're going to try to mix Deontay Johnson in a little bit more, but who even knows what that situation is? Because without Tank Dell, that offense is just different. Keeping in mind they've lost Diggs already too. Nico Collins just being the only guy, they need some help for sure. And if they can't get Joe Mixon going, that offense is basically neutered. So the good news is your Kansas City Chiefs are going to be sitting on the couch watching all this alongside of you as you are relaxing and watching the AFC and NFC ding each other up as the Chiefs stay healthy along with the Lions on the NFC side. Christian, we have a rare opportunity ahead of us. The Chiefs don't play a football game this weekend, so that means let's talk a little NFL draft to finish it up. Just in case you were wondering, the Intangibles is going to be your draft podcast for the Chiefs offseason all the way up to the draft. We're going to be evaluating the roster, evaluating players, doing mock drafts, talking through scenarios. We're going to be hitting it all. So if you like the draft, if you like talking about it, make sure to follow along with us. Today, we talked about maybe doing a mock draft, but we didn't want to get too into the weeds and be talking about guys in the 5th and 6th round that you might not know yet as we get closer to the draft. So today, we're just going to talk about 3 players that we really like that we've done evals on. I want to start off with picking a guy that I'm actually writing an eval for the written content for the website right now, and that's North Carolina running back Omarion Hampton. Christian, I have changed my philosophy on the draft a little bit here recently. I was telling you yesterday on the phone, I used to get really excited about upside and tools and traits and ceiling, and anymore, I'm just like team draft a good football player. And I know that sounds so stupid, but like if I told you at pick 32, you could get a really good ass linebacker that you feel great is going to fit for your system, or you could get this traitsy edge rusher who only has like 3 career sacks in college, but has all the tools to become an NFL star pass rusher. Which are you taking?
It depends on the stage of team you're in, but like right now, I would probably go with the sure thing, which I think is your point here, right?
Yes. Yeah. And I agree. I do think that there's an element of taking the swing, right? And then there's a whole nother element of like, where is your team? Where are you picking at? It's different at pick 32 than pick 9. However, when it comes to drafting damn good football players, I'd like to bring to the table Omarion Hampton. He is a 6 foot, 200-pound running back. He was a 3-sport athlete in high school, a 4-star recruit. He was the Gatorade North Carolina Player of the Year, and I love watching this guy play football. He's got quality contact balance. He runs with excellent pad height. Whenever tacklers try to tackle him, it just feels like they never going to get a clean shot on him. They're always at a side, jumping at ankles. He's just really elusive. And another thing that I really like about him, when I first started watching him, I was like, okay, well, this guy's got average speed. But then he hits the open field, and it seems like he does have an extra gear when he hits the open field, especially in the passing game or in the screen game. He's above average in the receiving game. He's set a career high with 330 plus yards receiving this year. Excellent lateral agility to make tacklers miss with more than just power. His 1,222 yards after contact ranked 2nd in all of FCS, only behind Ashton Genty. He's got 45 carries of 10 plus yards, 68 forced mixed tackles, back-to-back seasons of over 1,700 total yards. He's an ideal fit for the Chiefs scheme. He's 12th in FBS in zone snaps, as far as like zone read, or not zone read, but zone scheme running plays. He's a willing pass blocker. My comp for him, youthful Kareem Hunt or Javonte Williams pre-injury. Javonte Williams pre-injury was pretty damn good. I had to go with the Javonte Williams, another North Carolina guy. But you want to talk about a guy that I think could be a true needle mover at running back for the Chiefs. It's Omarion Hampton. And I know that a lot of people would get upset about doing the running back at 32 thing again. But I do think that there's a scenario that this could be the best player on the board. Now, I don't want to do reverse history with running backs and picks, but I was furious a few years ago when the Chiefs were rumored to be interested in drafting Jahmyr Gibbs at pick 31 when the draft was here in Kansas City. I was happy that the Lions took him where they did. I laughed at the Lions for doing it. And I was like, boy, I'm so glad that they saved the Chiefs from doing that. Well, guess who's the idiot? This guy. Okay. Because if Jahmyr Gibbs was here in Kansas City, how different would this offense be? Incredibly different, right? Even if you don't feel like they might not have gotten the same version of him just because the Chiefs offense is different, I think you're probably a bigger element in the passing game. The problem with Clyde Edwards-Helaire wasn't that he was a running back. It's that he wasn't a very good player and he got hurt, right? To me, Omarion Hampton has a chance to be a real difference maker on this team and a great fit for what they want to do. And it can help Isaiah Pacheco become a better player because I think right now we've seen that Isaiah Pacheco is a good 1B or a 2 rather than a 1A. And you want to talk about being able to get difference makers on offense as Hollywood Brown's a free agent, as DeAndre Hopkins is a free agent, as Travis Kelce might be heading off to retirement. This is a way that you can instantly add a threat to your offense. Ask teams how they feel about stopping Derrick Henry in the playoffs or Saquon Barkley in the playoffs, right? Those are really good players that teams spend hours planning for. Running backs don't matter it's kind of a thing that is just said all the time. You can get value out of late day running backs or whatever, but if you want a difference maker, you're going to have to invest. So Omarion Hampton, the back end of round 1, mid round 2, I would be thrilled.
Yeah, and I'm so happy you finally got on him because I have been watching him for I don't know how long, the past 4 months, and just been thinking he might be running back 1 in the draft. He might be. I know Ashton Jeanty is this. Savior.
I'll tell you, I've got questions about Jeanty. I think he's done. Yes. I think he's done enough to be the top running back prospect in the class, but maybe it's just the Clyde flashbacks for me. But kind of undersized guy with like lacking long speed. It scares me a little bit. Not a ton of receiving production. I think the thing with Jeanty though is just the contact balance is insane, and like the way people bounce off him as a tackler is just hilarious. But yeah, man.
Well, and part of me doesn't think that that's going to translate either. But at some point, you have to, give him the props that he's due, and he's obviously going to be the running back 1 taken off the board. But watching Omarion Hampton, you're like, okay, if Ashton Jeanty wasn't here, everybody's talking about this dude. That's just the way that this draft is. Now, do you have him as your running back 2? You're running back 1
right now. Like it's tough because like I really don't even bother with some of the guys at the top. Like Nick Scorton is a guy that I think would fit really well with the Chiefs. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on him because I just don't think he's going to be there. Right.
Yeah.
So I do think, honestly, if I was making a true big board just based off of the Chiefs, and let's say that they could hypothetically pick wherever they wanted to, I think I might slightly lean towards Hampton 1, but I think Jeanty deserves the nod, and I wouldn't have any problem with anybody who has Jeanty over him. I just think the outside zone, the passability, like I said, the shades of Kareem Hunt, the contact balance, I think it'd be a great fit for the Chiefs. Whereas Jeanty, I feel a little bit more of that downhill gap power scheme, and the Chiefs have run more of that here lately. But like I said, Hampton's a great fit.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mentioned his name a few weeks ago, and it makes me very, very happy that you're in on him.
Oh, absolutely.
My first prospect is another running back, Quinshon Judkins. This is a every down running back from Ohio State. He's 6 foot, 219 pounds, probably going to run somewhere in the 4.4s for 40 time. I'm just going to list off some of his accomplishments over the past 3 years. So he is a junior, probably going to come out. First year at Ole Miss. Whoa, hold on. Yeah, first year at Ole Miss. Led the conference. 1,567 rushing yards, 16 touchdowns. Both led the conference. That's the SEC. That's not, Big Ten. That's SEC running back. First year, led the conference in rushing yards, attempts, and touchdowns. Okay, second year, sophomore year, 1,158 rushing yards, 15 touchdowns, led the conference in touchdowns again. Okay, and this past year for Ohio State, where he was essentially a split back, or one of the 2 running backs that were part of that offense, 924 yards, 10 touchdowns. This is a guy that finds the end zone. He's very, very good in open space. They run him. If I was going to pick him or the other, what's his name? Hendrickson?
Travion Henderson.
Henderson,
Yep.
that other running back from Ole Miss. I think that he is clearly the better prospect. I see him as like Kareem Hunt with like a little extra pop. And we're going to use the Kareem Hunt comp probably 10 times this offseason just because we know our viewers know him so well. But like great burst, good open speed, does a very good job at reading linemen and linebackers. And he's probably a second round guy, maybe into the first, start of the second round guy. It depends on where these teams are going to value running back with the devaluation of the position over the past couple of years. But it's like he is absolutely a guy that could come in, be Kareem Hunt plus a little bit more. And if you're looking at this past year and say, hey, you get Kareem Hunt, but the old version, and he's got higher top end speed, it's like I think every Chiefs fan would sign up for that. And I know we love Isaiah Pacheco, but let's get somebody back there that can legitimately make a major difference on the offense like you were talking about. Let's get a legit weapon, can be used in the pass game, used in the run game. I don't think he's a fantastic pass blocker, but he's not unwilling. I think he just lacks that technique that a guy like Amarian Hampton has whenever going up against a blitzing linebacker or, chipping an edge.
Yeah, I think with Judkins, one of the questions that has to be answered is like what changed from Ole Miss to Ohio State. I think the obvious answer is that Henderson and him are just a clear 1A, 1B situation, and that there was a little bit of productivity. But I think some of the other numbers, I'd have to dig into some of the premium stats and really look at yards after contact. He just doesn't seem as dynamic in Ohio State system as he did in Ole Miss. But yeah, you want to talk about starting out this season, there have been a lot of NFL teams that would have been thrilled to have Judkins and Henderson as their two running back tandem, right? Yes, and I actually like Henderson a little bit more for the Chiefs because the pass pro is so good. He's the definitive best pass protecting block in the class, and I love his home run speed. Like he's kind of like discount Jahmyr Gibbs a little bit. I don't think he's got quite the vision that Gibbs does or the speed, but I like both a lot. And, I wouldn't be mad with either, too. And I think both have the potential to be a lead back. I like Judkins a little bit more as kind of a full-time lead back rather than Henderson, but I think Henderson would fit really well with Pacheco. Yeah. A couple of slight breaking news items while the podcast is recording here. The Raiders have fired their general manager after 1 year, Tom Telesco, former manager or general manager of the Chargers. I'm not sure what that means. And then Carson Beck is entering the transfer portal rather than the draft. So Carson Beck is leaving Georgia, potentially. You never know. Guys enter the portal, sometimes they end up staying. But he's entered the transfer portal. So some potentially draft altering news there. I don't think Carson Beck was a first round pick anymore. Right now, I think like those only guys are Shadur Sanders and Cam Ward. And then some slight buzz about Drew Aller, which, by the way, that'll be a really interesting situation with Penn State. If Drew Aller does go to the draft, which Brugler and some of the other draft guys are talking about him becoming one of the top quarterbacks in the class, their backup transferred to your Mizzou Tigers, right? Mm-hmm. So they would be like left with no girl at the dance while he goes to the draft. So it'd just be kind of an interesting situation there. But which is what I feel on those two breaking news things. All right. Another eval for me. This will be my last one. I don't want to run too long on these because I know not everyone loves these as much. It's going to be Alec Iomanner, the wide receiver from Stanford. You want to talk about a blue-collar, unselfish football player with physical traits and tools? Let's talk about Iomanner. He is 6'2", 210 pounds. Physicality against press coverage and at the top of the route and at the catch point. He is one of the best blocking wide receivers I have seen at the college level. His blocking will help him find the field real quickly. I know that like we talk about this stuff and you're like, oh, you like the blocking wide receiver? Guess what? Every wide receiver does it, and it's important. And he's going to find the field fast. How many wide receivers struggle to find the field because they screw up that type of stuff? Not only just against cornerbacks, but he'll go dig out a linebacker, too, in the run game. And I'm telling you, every time he blocks, it is like fourth down in a Super Bowl. He will put guys on their ass to the point that it pisses off the defenders. You see them, and it becomes personal sometimes at his blocking level. And like I said, he went to the catch point, too. He does have good size. He's got a track background too. So he's quick. Track background, 10.7 100-meter dash in high school. He actually went to high school in Canada. He was, I believe, a top 10 finalist for like their Olympic team or something. Something like top 10 200-meter dash as well too. But he's physical with the ball in his hands, has great feel. I think this is a guy who has speed down the field to win at the catch point, and then also can be a yak threat as well. He has great feel in zone, knows how to sit down and find the soft spot. He's very quarterback friendly. Honestly, when I looked at him at like early career Juju Smith-Schuster for the Chiefs comp, more like when he was with the Steelers. And then like non-Chiefs comp, Juwan Jennings, where like this is a guy who's got a lot of tools that can get open, help you find soft spots in zone, wins at the catch point, and then is also really good at all the little things. I love Alec Ayomanor. I don't think that he'll be a first-round wide receiver. I think there's only going to be 3, maybe 4 if someone falls in love with a speedster like Marcus Golden, like Isaiah Bond. I think it's going to be Burden. I think it's going to be McMillan, and I think Travis Hunter. But Ayomanor could be a guy that goes in the top of the second, and you know who would love to get their hands on him? A Shanahan guy because of the blocking. You know, like this guy has like 49er or Packer written all over him because of all the little blocking things that he does. But I love Alec Ayomanor, and he's a very useful player. Like I think that this could be a guy that takes over the Justin Watson role. Justin Watson, to the chagrin of many Chiefs fans, plays a lot of snaps. You know why? Because he does that stuff, and that stuff matters. So you might as well get a more youthful, high ceiling player like Ayomanor who could do that stuff instead of putting time into 29-year-old Justin Watson.
No, I agree. I don't know if he's a early second round pick. I would probably have him in the later second round. Now, part of that's just because of the positional value, right? There are only like 5 wide receivers that are going to be taken in the first 2 rounds. Like, I mean, that's probably talent wise if you're going to do that. I really like about him is blocking, but he reminds me kind of that MVS sort of player where he's like a taller guy. You can put him in the slot or on the line and he's just going to block the shit out of somebody. And
that's a good comp too. And guess what? MVS was the best run blocker on the Chiefs when he was here. And you know, that's part of the reason why he played even when he couldn't catch the freaking ball.
Well, and that's the thing with Elick is like, he's not going to make those mistakes. I don't think that I've seen him drop a football in the last couple of times that I watched his film. I watched a little bit last night after talking with you just to, get a really good feel of him. And he wasn't dropping the easy passes. Like, this is not MVS. This is not the, who was that guy last year from Oregon that everybody was comping to MVS?
Troy Franklin.
Yeah, this is not Troy Franklin.
With it. Yeah, and man, I was a big Troy Franklin guy. Please do not search my name on Twitter with Troy Franklin. You will see tweets that make me look very stupid. Especially, he went with Bo Nix and is still getting outsnapped by UDFA guys and others. Mm-hmm. Especially like when Marvin Mims was there, it's just like, But the NFL told you what they thought of Franklin, him falling to day 3. He was a guy that, like, at the beginning of the year, I was mocking to the Chiefs at the end of round 1. So don't listen to me. Yeah. I don't know. We don't know anything. We're all just guessing.
Oh, yeah. Well, and you probably saw the upside with Troy Franklin, where it's like, dude, this deep threat that if he
highly productive. Yeah. I don't get it, man. I don't get it.
And so Alec is kind of like that, but he's not. I think that he's probably a better prospect than Troy Franklin.
He's got what, 4 inches of height and 30 pounds on him. That helps too. Like,
yes.
That was something that even as someone who's excited for Xavier Worthy to be a Chief, Brian Thomas has like 4 inches of height and like 30 pounds on Xavier Worthy and ran like 1/10 of a second slower than Xavier Worthy. That's why Brian Thomas is special. And Xavier Worthy is special too, but like that's why one of them like is one of the top, should have been an all-pro. Yes. Honestly.
Well, and went pretty high up in the first round.
Yes.
Like I don't think anybody was going to take Xavier, maybe the Bills late in the first round, but like, no, there's a reason those 2 players were separated. But anyway, going on to my next one, I'm going to go with kind of a low key pick here. Tight end for Texas, Gunnar Helm.
Yeah.
And this is not a name that you have probably heard before. He's probably a day 3, day 2, late day 2, day 3 guy. He's their wide tight end for Texas, and he's 6'5", 238, probably is going to run a 4.7. Again, I really see him as like a mid to late 3rd, kind of early 4th guy. But if, heaven forbid, Travis Kelce retires at the end of the season, and you have Noah Gray as your number 1 tight end, and you have the tight end whose name I'm completely forgetting that we just drafted this past year. Jared Wiley. And you need that 3rd guy. Gunnar Helm will be your guy. He is a wide tight end. I think his blocking is a bit underrated. And what he really does well is he finds those empty spots in the zone over the middle of the field. he's not somebody that you're going to come in and it's going to be like Noah Gray, where you expect him to be the next Travis Kelce. This is not the type of player that he is. But if you're looking for that tight end 2, where you can run a 2 tight end set or a 3 tight end set, and you want somebody who is going to be reliable, has reliable hands, a big target, he's got a huge wingspan. It's like, just make it easy for Patrick Mahomes to throw one over the middle. That's going to be the guy. And I think that if Travis Kelce does retire, which I think is a real possibility, I think they're going to be looking for somebody like that in the draft. And 3rd round, 4th round pick, that's what you use it on. Like, nobody's going to be mad at that. Now, I just want to temper expectations a little bit. I do think he's a fantastic player. He kind of reminds me of Pat Freiermuth a little bit. But he's not going to be a world beater, but he'll be, you're talking about draft good players. This is a good player. Draft him, put him on the team, get him legit snaps.
Yeah. And, I think you brought up a really good point there. Like, you mentioned Travis Kelce's name. Nowadays in the NFL, you're not finding Travis Kelce where the Chiefs found Travis Kelce. And Travis Kelce was a little bit of a hidden gem too, because of his age, because of the issues in college. And then, by the way, he played 1 snap his rookie season due to an injury. So Travis Kelce ain't walking through that door. Travis Kelce is getting taken in at pick 12 by the Raiders and Brock Bowers. That's a guy who's got that ability, right? And I think if you want to look at the high end tight ends this year, it's Tyler Warren. It's potentially Colson Loveland, who I think people are a little bit lukewarm on now compared to where his stock was at the beginning of the year. And then Harold Frannon from Bowling Green, Harold Frannon Jr. But the level of competition questions a little bit there. After that, you're getting into what I would call Blake Bell zone, which is like, this is a guy who can block. This is a guy who can catch the ball. You hope for more. And there are a lot of like Dalton Schultz's and Pat Freiermuths out there. And I think if you're talking about just look at the projection of Noah Gray. Noah Gray just got an extension here in Kansas City, and this is the most the Chiefs have gotten out of him. His rookie year, he caught like 6 passes. Jared Wiley caught 1 pass. Now, a lot of that was due to injury, and maybe the Chiefs had more in mind for him. But I think you're looking at much more of like, hey, what if we have a 3 tight end set where all 3 guys can catch the ball? All 3 guys can catch the ball. So when we're playing 13 personnel, we're a little bit more dynamic. Like Jared Wiley, good at the catch point, good seam, good athleticism, not a great yak guy, doesn't break a lot of tackles, but a quality blocker. I think a lot of the same things can be said for Helm, and that way you just kind of start stacking chips and say, hey, what if we have 3 or 4 good tight ends rather than having an all-pro who is, really kind of a slot guy and an out wide receiver, and we can put on the back end of a 1-by-3 formation and win as the ISO. Like that's just not going to be a guy that you find. That is Brock Bowers, and that's just not really going to be an option for this team unless you find a diamond in the rough. Now, like I said, Harold Frannon Jr., it's a shot. I think, and I know that some people will do this too because of his complexion, a little Isaiah Likely to him, right? Which like every time I watch a damn Ravens game, I'm like, why don't they use Isaiah Likely more? Like he looks like a world beater against the Chiefs, and then it just like sometimes he just disappears in game. Now, I will say Mark Andrews has been a lot better since that injury that he had in the offseason, and he wasn't healthy against the Chiefs. But anyways, that's going to do it for the prospect talk today. We're going to be going through every position on the roster, going through free agency with you, talking about fits for the Chiefs, and then starting to get into that draft and kind of doing mock drafts. We're going to be locked in on the drafts, but right now we are locked in on the Chiefs going to the playoffs and doing their best to complete the 3-peat. Right now, the Arrowhead Addict channel, it's got 54,500 subscribers. We want to get to 55K by the Super Bowl. So please help us out. If you're an audio-only listener, make sure to subscribe and to like these videos. If you're not an audio-only listener and you're listening on video, thanks so much for doing so. Be sure to leave a comment as well. And hey, become a member of Arrowhead Addict. This is a great time to do it in our premium Discord. We just wrapped up our fantasy football league. I won't be talking about the results of that league, mainly because my season was very tightly tied to Breece Hall, who, newsflash, did not have a great season. But we appreciate you. Christian, I appreciate you for joining me on the show. And shout out to Richard, our awesome producer, who is always flexible with our schedule, even when there's a winter tundra and Christian doesn't have to work ever. So that's going to do it all from us here at Arrowhead Addict. Thank you so much. And as always, go Chiefs.